Welcome, everyone. I think some folks are still joining, so we're just going to give a minute or two. So I see people jumping onto the call, lots of familiar names. Okay, I think we are ready to go. Melissa Walker from Jazz House Kids is saying hello. Hi, Melissa. All right, looks like we're ready to go today. For those of you that I don't know or haven't met personally, my name is Adam Pearl. I'm president and CEO of ArtPride New Jersey. And we're so thankful that you could join us this morning for our weekly COVID webinar. With me, as always, Anne-Marie Miller, our Director of Public Policy and Advocacy. So this morning, a little bit different than the past few weeks. But we'll go over that. For those of you that are new to the Zoom webinar, just want to point out that at the bottom of the screen, you have a lot of different options, but in particular, you have the chat and the Q&A option. And those give you an opportunity to either speak to other folks and to ask questions. And so Anne-Marie and myself and Jim Atkinson, who's our Director of Programs and Services, who's running the back end for us, we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll do our best to get those questions and answered, either answered there in the box or bring them live here to the webinar. So this morning, as I mentioned, we're going to do a little bit different. Anne-Marie is actually going to give us an advocacy update and make sure that we're all sort of on the same page. And we're also going to have today a few polls as Anne-Marie works her way through the presentation she's put together about some of the different relief programs that are available. And so you're going to see some polls that are going to pop up on your screen. You also can see the polls tab there at the bottom of your screen. And we'll ask you to just quickly answer the polls so that we can share the data live here with everybody participating. And we're also going to have some time, as I mentioned, to do some questions and answers at the end if you'd rather wait for that rather than do it along the way. So with that, I will throw it over to my my fellow ArtPride team member, Anne-Marie, for our presentation for today.
So good morning, everybody. It's Friday again. This is our 5th webinar since our first on March 27th, which is kind of remarkable all by itself. We hope everybody's well. We will share a few updates up front. And let's see if my screen actually is gonna work. Let's see. Of course, it was working 2 minutes ago. And there we go. So what's new? What month is it? I think if we look out the window, it's raining. It tells me it's April. We're doing a little bit different this time. We want to have an opportunity to interact with you. So let's go into what's going on. This week, CARES 1.5, or the patch, was voted on by the House yesterday, I guess it was, and it amends the prior CARES bill, and this is what it does. It adds money into PPP, 60 billion of which is set aside for smaller institutions. It adds money into the SBA EIDL loans, the Emergency Economic Injury Program as well, the 2 SBA programs, and $30 billion to community development financial institutions to be able to work with as locally as possible. And then $100 billion for hospitals and testing, sorely needed. What's still needed? These are the things that the nonprofit community outside of and including the arts is working on, strengthening the charitable giving incentives. As the last CARE version of the CARE bill passed, there was now a $300 ability to itemize charitable deduction itemization for folks that don't itemize separately. So it's a what we want to do is strengthen that charitable giving incentive to be able to allow more donations to be recorded and used for tax purposes by non-itemizers. So, that is something we've been talking to our Congress about, and we want to expand that if possible. Making sure nonprofits are treated fairly by increasing the amount of unemployment insurance reimbursement for self-funded organizations. And also, lastly, increasing emergency funding. As you know, what was left out was funding for the states, who are, all of which are suffering greatly in terms of trying to deal with their own state budget situations. So what did we get for the arts out of the CARES Act? $75 million has each gone to the NEA and the NEH. The New Jersey share from the NEA, you can see on the screen, just short of $500,000. For the NEH, a little bit more. And then our regional arts organization is receiving, $819,000. So I know that the State Arts Council is working very hard on trying to get this funding out quickly through the door, through the NEA CARES funding, that is. I do not know the guidelines. I know they're working on them for the New Jersey Council on the Humanities. I believe there will be operating grants going out as much as $20,000 for humanities institutions, which I believe would include many of our museums around the state. And the Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation has not yet told us exactly how that funding is going to be given out. They do cover 6 states, and including the Virgin Islands as a territory. So whether they'll be giving that money to the state arts agencies or giving grants out directly, as soon as we know more information, we'll share that with you. Some of you may already have a relationship with the Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation through their touring program or the jazz program. So you can also make inquiries directly to Teresa Coleman over there to see what her thoughts are. So this is the part, what can you do? Tell your members of Congress what is and what isn't working. This is probably a good time to launch one of our poll questions. Did you get PPP in the first round? So if you could just respond to that and let us know. It's important that you let your members of Congress know the frustration you may be experiencing with PPP. Hopefully this second round will take care of some of that, but at the same time, it's important that they hear from you. Also tell them that $492,000 for New Jersey through the NEA isn't enough. Not that the NEA can control that, because they're giving it out in almost equal proportions to all the states, but that $75 million goes so far for 50 states. And then tell your members of Congress to help strengthen that charitable giving incentive and expand it beyond $300. Congress does come back after May 4th to start to consider the next phase of the CARES Act. Do we have any data on that?
Yeah, so Amory, I don't know if you can see this. It looks like Jim just ended the poll. We had 37 of the 56 folks that are on the call respond, and I think that everybody. Well, I guess we can click share results. That's one of the buttons here. 76% said no, 24% said yes. So about a quarter of the folks that applied, at least on this call, did get PPP in the first round. And I would add that ArtPride is in the no category as well for the first round.
All right, thanks. Okay, my computer's a little slow again. Let's see. I think it has
Your
to.
computer knows it's Friday.
Yeah, it's feeling it.
It's not unsure which day it is.
So here's something else you can do. You can attend the Arts Action Digital Summit. You probably all know that we weren't able to go to DC in the end of March. Still feeling bad that we couldn't see those cherry blossoms, but I don't think a lot of people did. All the week of April 27th through May 1st, there will be several sessions on all of these issues, including how to advocate with Congress on the CARES Act and how the arts can benefit from that in the next version. So please go to artsusa.org. Registration is required, and you can see the list of the sessions that are available and see how they fit your schedule. You can join for the entire time, or you can join for 1 day or 2 days. I believe, you know, they parse it out to make it easy for your schedule. Let's do the next poll question. Did you receive any funding through the Small Business Emergency Grants for through the New Jersey Economic Development Authority?
Okay, so the poll just went up. You can tell that everyone on the call is got, by the second poll, way more familiar with it. You could the responses were immediate and shot up. If you're not seeing, for some reason, the poll pop up for you, I don't know why that would be, but you could certainly go down below, and I think you can click on that button. But looks like most folks are responding.
So, Jim, if you can share that, we'll get that.
It should. Jim's saying that's showing up. All right, he just ended it,
Okay, there you
and
go.
he shared the results. 92% said no. So
Wow.
only looks like only 3 of the 37 respondents said yes.
Okay.
And Anne-Marie,
Well,
that's the loan rather than the small. You were talking about the small business emergency.
It's the one that you applied for, Adam. So.
Okay. So we would have been yes in that. We did get $5,000 from the NJEDA.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how that program's going to ramp up again, so we'll keep an eye on that. And maybe it's a good idea we can invite the EDA people back to talk about what's working and what's not working there. Next poll, are you eligible for NEA CARES grant?
So that's up. So I'm going to take this opportunity to talk to note that actually ArtPride. I mean, I'll steal a little bit of your thunder, but I'm giving you a break for speaking, Anne-Marie. So I wanted to share with everyone that actually ArtPride received an NEA grant in March, which does make us eligible for this NEA CARES grant. That grant that
it's a secret.
We're not allowed to.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. It's all right.
Are we? We're not allowed to talk about it yet.
Not really, but it's okay here. It's okay here. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I would just say that we're eligible, and that I'll leave it as a teaser. We're very excited for the program. It's not a ton of funding, but it's some important work that we have ahead. So we're a yes in this category for ArtPride. So Jim, I think we could end this one and share it. This is a little more down the middle: 58% no, 42% yes.
Okay, and so we do know that 3,700 organizations that have received NEA funding over the past 3 to 4 years are eligible for that. So it is going to be competitive, and you know, will be interesting to see. I believe it's operating money again, not specific to any program.
For those that didn't maybe attend the webinar or haven't heard this statistic, I did attend the NEA CARES webinar, and they noted that there's about 3,300 eligible organizations, and they have funding for about 800. So, you know, you're in that 20 to 25% funding. So to Anne-Marie's point, it will be very competitive. And I would certainly encourage the folks from New Jersey to write about how affected we are here in New Jersey and how different that is than many other places right now.
Absolutely. So as the crisis lingers, the impact on our field is increasing, and the amount of concern and frustration that we've been hearing from the field is growing. And so one thing you can do is write an opinion editorial. And here we'll put this information up again in our COVID page, but Harvard Kennedy School of Government offers some really concise and easy tips on how to write an opinion editorial. This can also be applied to a blog post. So if you please take advantage of this opportunity to do that. All right, we're gonna.
We have a question. So John McEwen, I think most folks know John is the director of the New Jersey Theater Alliance. John says, good morning. Are you aware of the .org.main controlled by public interest registry is being sold off to a private equity firm, Ethos Capital? This is bad news for any nonprofit. Our fees going up. This is dangerous, especially now. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so here's the deal. I reached out to Linda Zippo at the Center for Nonprofits about this yesterday. Bonnie Monty from the Shakespeare Theater brought this up in an email. And so what we're hearing is, yes, the deadline on this sale is May 4th coming up. What I've been told is that this is being, it's the Attorney General in California, where the sale is being held, is dealing with this and has many red flags and questions. What I've been told is that any kind of call to action from New Jersey at this point is not going to be helpful or effective. So I think the only thing we can do is sort of keep you in touch with what's going on. If I hear of anything different, I mean, that was an email from Linda this morning. She just said, any kind of rally cry from New Jersey isn't going to really help too much at this point. So I'm sorry, I can't give more information on that, but we are following it closely. So, and while we've labeled this part Q&A, we don't profess to have a lot of answers. So, but what we will do is take good notes and try to answer questions that you raise, moving forward.
John just noted too that he's going to be speaking with Linda later.
Yeah,
well.
John's on the board of the center. So, I mean, if you can get us any more information, that would be really helpful.
So as we get to this questions and answer part of the webinar here, I just encourage folks to go down into the Q&A button on the bottom and type in your question there. And as Anne-Marie said, either we'll do our best to answer, but part of this too is learning what you're looking for answers, the answers you're looking for, and how we can continue to bring you that information.
We have one more poll question that Jim could put up. It's, do you currently have a line of credit with your banking institution?
Ooh, this is fascinating for me.
And we realize that, the reason we ask the question is because we know that there are many arts organizations that are renters, that don't own property. So we are curious to see what kind of relationships you may have.
Okay, Jim, I think that's everybody. He's going to share the results. It's about 60-40 yes.
Okay.
It's exactly 60-40 yes.
Great. Well, that's really interesting. And, I know we've been struggling at ArtPride with that for a long time. So, because we are renters and we're a service organization. So in terms of collateral, it's been difficult to secure that kind of line of credit, but we're working towards it.
And I will say, and I won't, I don't know, just because the person didn't write to everybody, but wrote it to us, that one of the folks here that runs an arts organization said they applied for a line of credit yesterday. So they said no to the polling question, of course, but, are working towards that. And I'm sure they're not alone.
So Andy asked a question, what happens when the hotel motel tax goes near zero? Which is a really good question. And the answer is we don't know. So I don't expect it's going to go near zero, but in terms of the amount that will be collected through the hotel motel occupancy fee, that is and that's anybody's guess at this point. Adam, you want to answer that?
So yeah, the other part of this to understand is the hotel motel tax goes near zero. So I think we also have to take into perspective we're 5 weeks into this. I understand there will obviously be long-standing implications on the hotel motel occupancy tax. I do think that the part of this to understand is that if that pool is about $100 million or was about $100 million, if it, let's say, goes in half or whatever, that portion of it, the hit goes against the general fund before it goes against, the appropriations piece that comes out of the hotel motel tax. But at the same time, as we look forward to FY21, sort of all cards are on the table, and that's part of the advocacy we're doing to make sure that any changes that happen within the budget don't affect the State Arts Council. So we have a few questions. Oh.
Yeah, Anita asked a really good question that's actually been coming
Please.
up. And I'm sorry, she actually asked before, Andy. Is the broad performing arts community having a discussion about how to function in a post-COVID world, the need for some kind of distancing? And that exact question was part of a discussion with State Arts Action colleagues, so other advocacy organizations around the country yesterday. Utah has already set up some really strict guidelines about how families can be together in a performing arts space and how much space needs to be between families within a performing arts space. So we're keeping an eye on what other states are doing, knowing that New Jersey is further behind because of the caution that the governor is expressing with regard to any reopening. However, if you were listening to the news this morning, you've heard that, there's Wildwood Boardwalk is opening to some degree. If you go into a store for a tacky t-shirt, you can walk back out and do whatever you need to do in a certain manner. So I think there's some test cases that are going to be working out. I would love for ArtPride to be able to host some kind of forum on this. Jersey Arts Marketers Facebook page has been asking some of these questions as well. So I would direct you towards that. I know Two River Theater has been working on some of this in terms of their budgeting. I'm really curious to hear what arts organizations are doing, and maybe this is something we can deal with in another webinar specifically. I know that doesn't answer the question, but we'll figure out a way to talk about this better. Karen has a.
Do you want to do? I was gonna say, do you want to do Hillary's question? I think
Go
she
for
was. So Hillary's asking a question. Hillary Butler was asking a question about an application for NJEDA on the day that they opened 4/13, and she received the confirmation, but no follow-up communication. And should she expect any sort of communication? So I think that I would be proactive in getting back to the NJEDA. And if you don't, Hillary, if you don't have a contact there, I'm blanking. Our guest from a few weeks ago provided her contact information. We could certainly get that to you. But yeah, if you applied and you got a confirmation and you haven't heard one way or another, then you should definitely be following back up. Do you want to answer? You could do Karen. Karen looks like she has sort of two questions together.
So Karen Pinzolo from South Jersey Cultural Alliance asks, do we know if the NJSCA will be giving FY21 grants 3 months later than usual? If they have money to give out, that seems to be the case. The state fiscal year has been delayed to September 30th. So this is what we're all concerned about in terms of fall planning, planning a fall season and how do you get there when you've exhausted your FY20 funds and you don't think you're going to be receiving anything from the government until maybe November, December. So please know we're working on strategies to help bridge the gap, and at the same time, we'll stay really close on top of this. And I'm sure, constant communication with the State Arts Council will help answer those questions as well. Amanda has a question. Go ahead. Adam.
I was going to say Karen had a second question about bridge loans that were available. The one that I do know that is probably going to get released in the next few weeks is if you are a Dodge grantee, Dodge Foundation grantee, they're going to have their Dodge Prudential loan fund that they've had for several years. They're going to be opening that up. So that's one that I do know should be available.
And the bridge loan question is, is a good one as well, because even back when I was working at the State Arts Council, there's a lot. That's why we actually asked about the financial institutions. If you have a relationship with them, now is the time to be talking about bridge loans that might be needed in the fall. So do that now.
You want to do Amanda's question?
Go ahead, Amanda. Will there be grants for self-employed people with disabilities? Hi, John McEwen. It's nice to see Amanda here, and you know what? I'm going to type the answer to that question because Amanda can't hear us.
Okay. It's. I think you might have to go over to the answered
I
section.
will.
Sorry.
I'll send it to
Okay.
her.
Dip. And this is from it looks like from an anonymous attendee, but I think it's a good question. Says, as a jazz musician, I've been applying to every possible foundation, and many are closed due to funding. Could you supply via email with other options I have available, as well as the most current or new funding organizations many appear without warning to the general music community? Amory, do you want to just note some of the places online where especially individual artists can find resources?
Well, on our COVID page, we have a resource
Right.
that's specific to musicians. That was a page posted by Billboard, so I would go there to look and see if there's anything specific that you haven't tried yet. And then John says, let's see, am I going in order here? I guess. John says, McEwen, I will be having a webinar in a couple of weeks with an event consultant regarding ticketing and gathering policies. I will keep you all posted. That's great. The New Jersey Theater Alliance will be doing that. Thanks, John.
That's great. As is always the case with our partners at the Theater Alliance, they'll share it with us and we'll share it with everyone on the call. Grace Shackney has a question. If you applied for a PPP in the first round and never got a response, does the application carry over, or do you have to reapply in this new round? I would contact your bank, whoever you're working with, whatever bank, or if you're working with the Small Business Development Center, or whatever the case might be. I would go back to the entity with which you applied and double check to ask that question, because my understanding is it's different for every institution.
And then Mike Stotts from Paper Mill asks, do you know what is being considered for grants from the New Jersey Cultural Trust? So my understanding is that they're broadening the scope of what is available to apply for, knowing that the COVID situation has changed everything. I know that they're working on it. I know it will probably not be as restricted as it was before. So we'll keep an eye on the Cultural Trust and let people know as soon as we hear anything about that as well.
John McEwen wanted to make sure for whomever asked that question before about artists, and so everyone knows that, please reach out to the New York Foundation for the Arts, a great program for artists there.
Andy asks, Andy Chang from 90 Chen, can we advocate for insurance relief? For instance, workers' comp risk is much lower if there's no activity. The state regulates insurance, correct? And yes, the state does regulate insurance. We actually have a call to action on the ArtPride website about business interruption insurance, but we hadn't addressed the unemployment insurance part at the moment. So we'll be looking into that, injury insurance. And as far as the unemployment insurance goes for independent contractors, we have been keeping an eye on that. There was an actual webinar, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, with the New Jersey Department of Labor head, and it's the idea being that independent contractors need to keep applying for unemployment insurance, and if you are determined ineligible, that is really the first step towards getting there. The backlog has been reported in the news, pretty consistently. So keep pushing on that.
So Mary Eileen Forat with the State Arts Council staff had a recommendation for everyone. She says, I highly recommend watching Capacity Interactive's boot camp that they held yesterday. Great suggestions for art groups responding in the crisis and what the future may hold. And there is a YouTube link here that I'm going to try and copy and paste and send out via chat to everyone. And then we'll maybe see if we can include this somewhere amongst ArtPride's COVID resources.
Heather Keefe asks, has there been any movement about community development block grants being available? Which is a really good question and something we've been keeping a really, really close eye on. We've actually been in touch with the Business Action Center, New Jersey Business Action Center, trying to set up some phone calls to work up a webinar that would put folks in touch with their economic development people to see how they can access community development block grants. We've also been talking to some current community development block grant recipients that are arts organizations to understand better how they've formed those relationships to access that funding. We're really interested in seeing how this happens. Right now, the funding has gone to metropolitan areas and counties. It's all directed towards high census, high population areas, and also how you work with low to moderate income communities. So as arts organizations are opening up for business, we think this might be a real opportunity, and we will keep a really, really close eye on this. We're looking at it to see if we can set up a future webinar on this.
So Teresa Staub, I just, as I'm scrolling down, noted that Monmouth Arts has received a block grant.
Oh, Monmouth Arts, thanks.
Yep.
That wasn't on my radar, so.
Yep, that's, I think, Anne-Marie, let's get to the Steve Steiner question here. Do we have the actual restrictions posted by Utah
Yes.
for performing arts
Yes.
venues, since they were described as strict? And that might be a worst case scenario for us.
Yeah, I will share. They've been sharing it, and it's just a guideline. What we're also trying to do is reach out. We've reached out to the Secretary of State's office to see, who in fact from the arts community is providing advice on reopening, so that there can be some input from the field regarding this. And then Allison Tratner, many from State Arts Council are on the call. Thank you, ArtPride. Thanks, Allison. We've been working so closely together. It's been amazing. As soon as we have details about available state funds during the fiscal year extension, we will share widely. Also, regarding the Cultural Trust, the focus is shifting to focus on financial recovery. The guidelines will be made available in the next month or so, so the Cultural Trust funds are also subject to a changed timeline due to the fiscal year extension. So that answers some of Mike's question before. I knew that they were opening it up broadly, but we'll know more as soon as we can see those guidelines. And then there's anonymous attendee. I was told by my accountant that as an individual musician, I am not eligible for SBA or PPP loans. That's interesting regarding the PPP. I know actually I will post to the ArtPride website. There's a PPP checklist, a one-pager. It's actually a 1.5 pager that has some real basic tips on PPP in terms of what documents you need to be able to provide, and we'll share that because that might be really helpful for some folks as well. And then John McEwen says, I know some artists who have received PPP grants. Please get another opinion, he says, and that's a good point.
I think part of it too has to do with whether you're operating as an independent contractor, operating as an LLC. There's another question there, and then I think we do have. Oh, I thought we had someone with their hand raised, but let me see. We do. Do you want to answer? Okay, so would arts organizations qualify for? Teresa Staub is asking, would arts organizations qualify for the Pandemic Relief Fund? You can answer that one, Anne-Marie. For the New Jersey,
yeah.
okay,
so yeah, I was like flipping around on my computer here, so so which was not responding to me. So the request has gone in for arts organizations to be considered as part of the Pandemic Relief Fund. Yes, the request has gone in to Mrs. Murphy, to the head of the Pandemic Relief Fund, and to the governor. So I have heard some soft reassurances that at some point in time the arts community will be addressed, but I can't give a timeline. We're all being frustrated, but also knowing the frontline appeals are being dealt with first. So yeah.
So we have one more question here, and then there's two folks that have their hands raised. So Danny Campos is asking, this is marketing related, are the Jersey arts marketers groups going to hold virtual check-in meetings in regards to moving forward, sharing online content that orgs are creating, marketing tactics, et cetera? So the answer is absolutely yes. And so the next round of Jersey arts marketers meetings was actually serendipitously supposed to happen in May. And we've transitioned that obviously to a webinar format. And I'm stalling here, Jim, because I'm forgetting the date of the webinar. I don't know if you want to pop on and let me know. But
Yeah, Jim's
wait,
gonna
he's
kill me.
May 20. He's saying right here. He wrote
There
it.
we
He
go.
wrote it. May 20.
Go for it. So I downloaded the wrong PowerPoint that missed Jim's slide. So there
So
is
that
there's also, okay, so it's a May 20th webinar. Go ahead, Jim. You want to talk about it?
Sure. Hi. Yeah. Thanks, Danny. We are actually announcing later today that we are opening registration for that May 20th webinar. We were just lining up some guest speakers, and it is going to be specifically about how to message and reach out to audiences both now and when we prepare to reopen venues. So it's kind of a dual topic webinar, but you'll see more information about that coming out later today.
and to point earlier, if you're in that Jersey Arts Marketers group, or you're a marketer in New Jersey around the arts, even if you haven't never been to a jam meeting, definitely check out the jam Facebook group, because that's been very active on like a day-to-day basis. So you don't have to wait for the sort of the scheduled meetings. But absolutely. And again, I know that a lot of folks already know this, so I apologize, but if you haven't checked out jerseyartsevents.com, please do. That's where we have all of sort of the at-home virtual experiences you really put together there, and there's ability for us to be able to share what's going on. And we just really encourage you, because that's what the DJA team on our end has really changed the focus from what would have been our traditional campaigns to right now an at-home campaign for right now, and then starting to think about what it looks like into the recovery.
And the webinar, the JAM webinar, was another collaboration with the State Arts Council. So I'm going to thank them again for helping with that.
Absolutely.
Next week, we're going to focus on arts and health during COVID. So this just to give you a little teaser. She's actually going to be part of our webinar today, but next week, Julie Sherwood, who's a licensed psychotherapist, you can see all her credentials there. She works at Overlook in Summit, and she's going to talk a little bit about how she's also worked with oncology units and patients with music therapy. She's going to talk about how her work is interacting with what's going on now, how she's transferring to telecommunications, and also as a treat for our webinar attendees, as they've gone through, that'll be the 5 of the webinars. We're going to offer a little virtual relaxation with a music therapist for everybody who's here, because on Friday, sure, that's exactly what we all need, right? So I think we're done. Wait a minute, there's a question.
So Nia Thomas just wanted to share with everyone, and I think some folks know Social Impact Studios and Ennis Carter, that they conduct a weekly meeting on Wednesday on marketing communications. So thank you, Anita, for sharing that. And there, I think you see Anne-Marie. Heather had one more question.
Has, I've been trying to confirm that if a nonprofit applies for New Jersey Pandemic Relief Fund for the April 30th deadline and is declined, can we apply again? This is particularly relevant to arts organizations since the arts isn't a focus area right now. Does anyone have insights on this? I don't know. I was actually not sure that you could apply directly to the Pandemic Relief Fund for the April 30th deadline, so we're going to look into that. Again, as I mentioned, I think they know that we're suffering, we're vulnerable. They know we're second responders. They know we're out there providing free virtual services. But first frontline is getting priority, as it should be at this point in time. So positioning all of this has been really a delicate advocacy situation from our side and from our field. So I want to thank everybody for, again, joining us on a Friday morning early. and putting up with our Zoom skills that are increasing as we go along. And we have last poll question is our thank you. We're looking for feedback on whether today was helpful or not. We hope that if you have not had an answer to your question, at least we will try to answer them. And you've given us a lot of good food for future.
And I will say that if you have questions along the way, you need help, you need assistance, you're looking for information, that's what we're here for. You know, reach out to Anne-Marie, myself, Jim, anyone on the team. You know, we're all obviously working very closely together. And I also want to say thank you again to the ArtPride staff, to Anne-Marie and Jim and the rest of the team that I believe are all on the call right now. They're working incredibly hard on your behalf. And to what Anne-Marie said before, thank you to all of our partners, many of which are on the call today, the State Arts Council and the Theater Alliance, and so many more, so many of our members. And everybody has been great in terms of working with us, and we're really, truly appreciative. So thank you again for your time. And we hope you have a good weekend. Take care of yourselves, be well, stay well, and we're here when you need us for sure.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.